Hello! In today's video I'm going to be showing you something a little bit unusual. If you've been watching my videos over the past few months, I suppose, you will have seen that I've been getting quite into making baskets and cordage from foraged fibres, so things that are growing locally and definitely not with the specific purpose of being turned into anything. One of the first fibres I tried using was nasturtium stems, and I made a little basket out of them along with some hollyhock. And I've been playing around with the nasturtium because it self-seeded in the garden last year. We had some the year before. That turned into many last year, and we didn't keep them under control in any way, so they sort of took over a little bit. And over the winter we've just let them dry out and die back, and so that means that we have a lot of nasturtium straw basically in the garden. And so that, when I get it in, looks like this. It's very dry and brittle, and I'm going to be, rather than twisting it into cordage as I have done previously, or just using it as it is as the core for a coiled basket, I'm going to be braiding it, or plaiting it if you're using the actual UK term. So this here is some that I've already done, and the idea with this is that I'll either be able to turn it into a basket, as I have done, and stitch it, which should give a really pretty finish, or ultimately, if I have the time and patience to make enough of it, I would really love to actually make a summer straw hat. I think that would just be so cool. So I'm going to be showing you a little bit of the process of how I make this straw braid. You can also do it with dried grasses and other plants that you can find lying around. Anything that can be dried out and soaked and then it becomes more flexible. It doesn't need to be as strong as it does for cordage, because cordage puts quite a lot of strain on the fibres. As long as once you've dried and soaked it, it can stand up to being folded over for the plaiting. It's fun to experiment with, so I'm going to put these on to soak, and those will be going for about an hour, maybe a bit more, and then I'll show you how I do the braiding. So I have in this slightly dampened towel some of my nasturtium. The rest is soaking still, and I'm going to just take one strand, fold up the others again. Those will stay in the damp towel. That'll just keep them slightly moist so that they don't dry out too much. And then I'm going to need to split this because I don't want to be working with it at a double thickness. It's fairly easy to split. Just make a little break, and then it's got very long fibres parallel along the length. Just need to open it up a little bit, and then in fact I can get it in half. So if I just run my thumb through the gap, the nasturtium is sort of soft enough that it'll peel apart quite nicely. Is getting a little bit skinny there. do have to be careful at the joints where the leaf nodes were, because they can disrupt the long parallel fibres within the stalk. And then I'm going to just split this again. Now I'm not working really precisely. I'm going for an approximate thickness of plait when I'm done, but I'm not expecting it to be completely even. As with a lot of things that I do, it's probably going to be fairly rustic. And so I need 5 strands for the kind of plait that I've been doing. The stems sort of curl in on themselves a little bit, but tend to sort themselves out once you've worked with them for a little bit. And so I'm just going to fold one of these in half, and this one, if you can see, it gets much thinner towards this end. So I'm going to work with it so that we still got a decent amount of thickness, and then I'll have a point where I can add in another strand. This one's a little bit skinny, so this will be good for adding in alongside another one. And this is still something that I'm very new at. I literally tried it for the first time the other day. And obviously, you know, I plait my hair quite regularly and have always plaited things, but I'm quite new to a 5-strand braid, and working with a fibre like this rather than something like hair or yarn. It's something a bit different. And some of the stalks behave differently depending on what part of the plant they came from, how thick the stalk was, how it's been treated by the elements. Right, let's fold that over again so those don't dry out. Okay. So I've got my 5 strands here. Some of them are just folded. This is just a little dandelion stalk that I'm going to use to tie the end, because they're nice and grippy and fairly strong, and just help to hold it in place. Tie it once there, and then again on the other side. And then anyone who did friendship bracelets as a child will be very familiar with the old safety pin it to your knee method. And keep the bits of dandelion out the way there. And I'm going to start with 3 strands on one side, 1 on another. And so this is going to be fairly similar to a 3-strand braid, if you've done one of those. The difference is that I'm going to be, rather than just passing it over, to get a nice neat edge, I'm going to be folding and making sure I keep a really consistent angle on the strand that I'm folding. So I take one from the outside and fold it across 2 into the middle. And I'll do the same with this one. Ooh, got a little bit of a manky bit there. So I'm just going to add in one of those skinny bits that I mentioned. And I'm just going to tie that onto the end. Or not. As with quite a few of these types of crafts that I do, it's all just a bit improvisational and fun. And I'm not looking for a perfect result. So then that will go across there. The first couple of steps tend to be a little bit annoying just while you get into the rhythm of it. And the first little bit, for me at least, is usually a bit wonky. And so again, taking one from the outside, folding it so that I'm keeping the strand flat. And so you can sort of see there I'm keeping all of the strands parallel. And I'm just using my thumb to sort of press a little fold into there. And just tightening in to make sure that I'm maintaining something of a regular width. Now we've got a little break in this strand here, which hopefully will just be covered up by the subsequent one. And I've got another narrower strand there held together with it, just to lend it a bit of strength. And as I go, just pressing it down with my thumb to keep it nice and flat, each time taking from the other side to the one I just took from, folding the outermost one over the two towards the centre. And I've been really surprised with how nice the finished braid, well, I say finished as if it's already become something. I've already done a fair bit. I did these ones the other day, and I've wound it onto the cardboard as I've worked, because where I'm working on my knee now, I was ending up pinning it to parts of the sofa further and further away from myself, to the point that, you know, I ran out of sofa, and so wound it onto the cardboard so I could pin the cardboard to the sofa and continue that way, and it meant that I was just able to make a nice continuous length. And I'm just starting a new piece here because I didn't want to have to join fresh nasturtium onto the ones that have already dried out. And so when I make whatever I end up making with this, be it a hat or a basket, there will be points where I just need to gently add in a new strand of braid. Sometimes as you go along, the outermost one ends up hidden behind the one next to it. Just need to remember that and pull it out. And so I've not heard of anyone using nasturtium stems for this kind of purpose before. When I try out new crafts, even before I try out new crafts, I tend to do quite a bit of reading. And sometimes just spending time reading tutorials and, you know, browsing on Pinterest and things is enough to sort of sate my curiosity, and I don't end up doing anything with it. I've read a little bit about paper making and soap making, and it's always, with those things, it's been a case of I could probably do that, but at the moment I'm not feeling a call to do so. So I do read up a lot on crafts. I won't let the amount of reading I'm able to do prevent me from doing things. I have done a little bit of reading on how straw hats were traditionally made. Is now definitely considered a heritage craft in the UK. I think there aren't many people at all who make straw hats now. I did find one sort of directory of heritage crafts which listed hat making, straw hat making like this, where you're making the braid from scratch, and it listed 2 people practicing in the UK. I have no doubt that there are probably more, but it's definitely considered, I think, an endangered craft. And in a way I can see why. Machine-made ones are going to be always cheaper and easier to make, easier to obtain. But I really like the idea of having a hat, again, made from free materials that otherwise would have been in the compost. And so traditional materials would have been things like straw, so cereal crop stems. It seems that to harvest things like wheat and barley for making straw hats from, you have to harvest the stalks earlier than you would for harvesting the grain, which means that straw grown for grain, plants grown for grain, if you're to use them for straw, then you won't actually get grain from them, which is a similar issue to the flax industry. Flax grown for fibre, you tend to harvest earlier than flax grown for seed, which means that it would be really nice to have a variant where you've got sort of a dual crop. But with this, the crop, as it were the flowers. They were very pretty last year. And these have just been sort of littering my flower beds until we've cleared them to make space for things that are finally growing in the spring. And so you can see this, it's not 100% even, but it's a vaguely similar width going down. And the idea will be that if I'm deciding to, well, the early stages of making a coiled basket and making a hat are sort of similar in that you're making a spiral. And so were I to make a hat, now when I'm talking about hat making, I'm talking in hypotheticals because I don't really believe that I'm actually going to be able to make enough of this to make a hat from. It's fairly time consuming, and although it's very enjoyable, a lot of my making time is taken up with other things at the moment. But it is nice to have something that is not knitting. But if and when I make a hat, it'll start off from the top of the crown. If you look at a straw hat, it'll often be made in the same way, that you start right in the centre and spiral outwards. And I think the method, well, there are 2 methods as far as I can tell for a fairly standard straw hat, where one, which I think is a traditional English style, is that you will have multiple strands of your plaited straw overlapping as the hat goes outwards. and then they're sewn through both layers to create, well, I think the next one probably goes under it. However it goes, you overlap the straw, and that means that you end up with quite a thick hat, and especially with a fairly coarse straw braid like this one I'm making here. The other method is to, when you're sewing it, rather than piercing through two overlapping layers, you get your needle and pass it along the edge of the inside of the edge pieces, if that makes sense. And then almost as you would do a mattress stitch for knitting, you go along, and so you end up with edges that are sort of lapped together. I think I will end up sewing something from this, whether it's a hat or just another basket. I'm likely to use linen thread that I have hand twisted, which again I will need to make a lot of linen thread, and it'll be a bit of a project, and I do get rather excited and occasionally carried away with projects like this. But I don't know, I'm just going to keep going with it for now and hope that before I get bored of it, I manage to do something interesting and nice. And now I'm getting to the point where I've almost done enough length that I'm going to want to pin it to something a little bit further away. And I've discovered that the easiest thing for me to do to keep everything in place and not have to rejiggle it all is to use one of these, which is it's just one in a set I was given of various office supplies, and it's just a little bookmark thing that just has a clip on it, page marker, and I can just slide that onto there, and it keeps all of the strands in the correct order and stops it from unraveling and everything, and that's really handy. So I'm going to pin it onto the arm of the sofa. I will continue working for a little bit just so that you can watch and maybe relax if you want to, and then yeah, I'll be back with you in a little bit. this is basically what I'm doing these days when I'm not knitting or working on other things. It's a nice little background thing to have. I tend to just do it in little batches, using up the nasturtium that I have soaked and ready, and keep my little clip on there for when I'm not working on it. And once it's dried out, I trim off the edges from where I've added in extra strands of the straw, and I'll probably end up having to make quite a few of these little cardboard bobbins. They're not bobbins, but once I've got quite a few of these together, then I will have enough to do something with, and we'll see how that goes. If I do end up making a hat, I will definitely show how that works out. I don't know whether I'll do it from the beginning or maybe give it a go just sort of on my own and then share once I've got the hang of it. I suspect it'll be, because it's something I've not tried before, it'll be something I'll have to get used to a little bit. But yeah, so it's a really nice, simple and calming way of using up some free materials. As I said, there are so many plants that you could try this with if you have a garden or even just some green space nearby. I'm fairly sure you'll be able to find something. You can do it with plain old grass as long as it's grown long enough. And yeah, I hope it's just another way of making something out of something that's basically nothing. So yeah, until next time, bye bye.